All right, guys. Hello and welcome to our weekly 30-minute workshop. My name is Trey Gonzalez. I'm a product manager here at Variphy, and I'll be your host for today's live webinar. We're also joined by my good buddy and colleague, Jim Schultens. Jim, how you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. How are you, Trey?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Doing great now that we're finally able to display Microsoft Teams. Feels
Yeah,
good.
it's been a long time coming. We're all excited about it.
Yep, a lot of work behind the scenes going on into this one. A lot more to come as well. So we're really excited. Jim's a systems engineer over here at Variphy, so he's going to walk us through the demonstration. And so for today's session, like I said earlier, we're going to cover Variphy 16.0, but specifically a sneak peek into our brand new Microsoft Teams phone integration. So I am excited to get started with the demonstration, but first, allow me to walk you through the agenda for today's webinar. So we're going to kick it off with a quick overview about Variphy and what it is we do. Then we'll jump right into the demo where Jim will showcase Variphy 16.0 for Microsoft Teams Phone. After the demo, we'll pause for Q&A and get some of your questions answered. So just so you guys know, the chat is disabled for this webinar, but the Q&A is open, so feel free to throw all of your questions there. And after the demo, we'll take a pause and I'll get those answered for you. I'll be monitoring those and make sure to get all the questions covered. And then lastly, we are going to reward one lucky attendee with a $50 Amazon gift card. So hang tight until the end and see if you got lucky. All right, now a little bit about us. Variphy is the preferred analytics and management solution for UC Analytics. We provide industry-leading dashboards and call reporting for Cisco Unified Communication Manager, Cisco Contact Center Express, Cisco Cubes, Zoom Phone, WebEx Calling Analytics, and now, or soon to be, Microsoft Teams Phone. We support all these platforms alongside a suite of management tools such as remote phone control, macros, change management, and DID management, which are all focused towards CUCM Cisco Call Manager. But like I said, today we are going to be focused on Microsoft Teams Phone and Variphy 16.0. So if you do have any questions about those other features I listed, or if you simply have an interest in taking them out for a test drive, feel free to message us in the, I would say the chat panel normally, maybe in the Q&A, that works. Or if you're already part of the Variphy community, you can reach out to your Variphy account manager for more information. If you're new, the website has a contact form as well. You can reach out to us there. All right, so one more thing before we kick off, Variphy does offer a managed consulting service where our systems engineers team engages with you on a one-on-one basis. We remotely provide consulting, unassisted reporting, dashboarding, configuration, and system monitoring assistance. And again, this is a service that provides you a dedicated Variphy systems engineer to do all the heavy lifting for you. And it gives you a completely hands-off experience. So for more information, please contact us. We'd be glad to speak more in length about these managed services. Now we can get right into the demo. Jim, I'll go ahead and give you access to share.
Awesome. All right, let me get some things out of the way and organized here. All right, thanks, Trey. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first official Microsoft Teams webinar. We at Variphy are super excited to be close to be releasing this new offering. I wanted to give you a sneak peek of what we've been working on. The tentative release date is March 21st, so right around the corner. We'll be updating that if things change, but for now, that's what we're looking at. And for those of you not familiar with our product, it can be deployed either on-prem or in a cloud-hosted environment. But in either case, you'll have web access to run reports on this initial release 16.0. In the near future, we'll be adding access to dashboards and widgets. So look forward to that. And so I'm going to start out here by just logging myself in. And we're going to go password right. All right, so once I log in, we're going to go to this history screen. That's my initial landing page. That can be changed for each user by clicking on your user icon in the top right corner. And the default feature after login is MS Teams Analytics. We can change that to dashboard once that's released in the next release. But for now, we're going to leave it on Call Analytics. And then this call history search type, I'll get into that in a little bit, but you can change that too. Change your time zone. So there's a lot of different options under your user profile here once logged in. So I'm going to start out, I'm going to get out of here and go to our platforms page under settings. This is our gear settings icon. So I can go to Microsoft Teams under platforms. And we're going to set up a new platform here. I've already got one configured, but we're going to set one up like it's a new platform we're going to connect to an MS Teams environment. First thing I want to do is go over here. Initially when you log in, there won't be anything configured here, so we're just going to add a new one. I'm going to give it a name, just simplicity, name it Variphy. And really the only other thing I need here is the tenant domain, which I'm going to use variphy.com. And then it lights up this authorized Variphy app. So this tenant ID will get auto-populated after I successfully authorize. I'm going to go ahead and click on my authorized Variphy app. It's going to give me a place where I can choose an account to use. I'm going to use my own account here because I am an admin on Teams. And then this screen is basically just giving you what permissions we're requesting for the MS Teams environment to be able to read call records, read directory data, and so on and so forth. So once I click accept here, it should bring me back to that initial page, and that tenant ID is populated because I did get a success message. So really, that's all there is to connecting to MS Teams. As long as you get a valid account, valid domain, it should be that easy. So once I click save here, it's going to bring me into this page here. From here, normally we'll go to CDR processing where we'll enable this. Go here. So my original one is enabled. This is disabled. So I can go ahead and click on this and go ahead and enable database processing. It's going to ask me to choose a database server. My database server is MS Teams CDRDB, and actually give me a database name that I can create. So I'm just going to name it test for ease of use here, and save and continue. What that's going to do, it's going to look at the database, say, hey, test database is not out there. Do you want to create it? Yes, I do. And that's going to go out and create that database for me. And then I can activate. And then it's also doing a sync with Microsoft Teams. So we don't get every piece of data in the CDR. There's some data in Teams like department and title. I'll show you that in a bit, but we don't get that in the CDR data. So we use this sync to mirror or match call records with the appropriate department or title, or there's a whole bunch of other things that we match up. So it gives a more complete call record then. So it's going to ask me to finish and schedule a sync. So that's going to take me to this page here where I can schedule a sync. We recommend you do that nightly. So any changes you make are reflected as soon as possible. Then the sync runs, it'll update any of that information. I'm not going to go through that here, but you do have the option to go to the sync tab here, and you can run a sync automatically, or you can, this one I don't have anything scheduled here, but you would see the schedule, next schedule date, and so forth. I did just run one earlier this morning. The CDR databases tab here just goes through, and for each account, like this one's the MS Teams account, it shows the database. And if I click on available data, it shows me what data I have and what's available to run reports on. Right. So behind the scenes, what we just went through, hopefully I don't bore you with this. I'm going to kind of go through this, what's happening behind the scenes when we do that authorizing. And then we'll get into reporting shortly after that. But so the Variphy app reaches out to our webhook in our cloud and sends an HTTP request to create or update a CDR web subscription for this particular tenant. The webhook app then takes the tenant ID and fetches an API access token for Microsoft Graph. Then goes to Microsoft Graph and gets all of the active subscriptions we have and either updates an existing subscription or creates a new one if it doesn't already exist. That subscription tells Microsoft that every time you get a CDR record, send it to a notification URL, and that notification URL points to a different endpoint in our webhook app, which contains the call identifier. The call identifier is key. The call ID is used, gets stored in our cloud in an app called Kafka. We then use those call identifiers when we go to process data. Basically, we get a list of call IDs, and then we reach out to Microsoft Graph, say, hey, give us all the call data for these IDs. We do keep track of, which ones were successful. If any failed, we keep track of that. So, there are no duplicates or we don't miss any data. So maybe more than you're looking for. Kind of get in the weeds on that, but let's get into the reporting and more exciting stuff here. So, like I said, the first release 16.0 will just be the call analytics reporting. So I'm going to go here, and on this page, you've got a couple different options. So we've got our history. This think of it like a sandbox or a playground where you can kind of run test reports to see if the data you're getting is what you're expecting, or what we're actually getting in data. We use this a lot for, hey, let's see what the data is giving us, and then we can create or build a report from there. The other thing this is used for is quick history search. Hey, did anybody call 911? I can do a quick report on 911 calls and see it here real quick. We're going to get into this in a little bit here, but the next tab you'll see here is the reports. This is where we have all our saved reports. So you can go through and gives you the option to run a report. You can edit a report. This here button is a copy button. So say I like this report, but I want to make a couple small changes for, maybe it's a department report and I want to create the same report for a different department. And, I could just make a copy of this report here and change the department name. Saves a lot of work in recreating reports. This download or export button, we use that in troubleshooting. If you're ever working with us on a support ticket, we may ask for the configuration of the report because we want to see how that report is configured. This will download a JSON file that you can send to us, and we'll be able to kind of put it in a lab and see how that report is configured and make suggestions. Obviously, you can delete a report too, and just an information button. So we'll get into these and run these in a little bit. The next tab here is schedule. So we can schedule reports and have them delivered automatically. You can schedule reports daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, year to date, all kinds of different options on that. So this one here, I just kind of made a test schedule. So, basically you're going to give it a name, and here's a pick list of all the saved reports. So you just pick the report that you want to run or have scheduled, and then the frequency. How often do you want to do this? By day of week, you can do it every day if I just select all days, or I could do it weekly by just selecting one day. So this one is Sunday. It's going to run at 12 a.m. And my search time window is for previous week. So our week starts on Sunday, so this is going to run the report for the week prior. And then you could exclude, if you don't want to see calls on weekends, you can exclude those days. And then you can also all day, you can include all day, or you can just do, if you get business hours are from 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, whatever, you can just specify the range of times you want to run that report for. Delivery here gives you an option to run the report and output it in either PDF, HTML, CSV, or Excel. If you do have graphing on the reports, that is only going to be HTML or PDF options. And then it gives you the option to either email the report. I don't have an email server set up for this lab, so I can't really do that. But then you can pick who you want it to go to. Gives you the option. You can either send the report as an attachment, or you can use a download link from the repository. And the repository is basically just that, repository of all the reports that have been run, and Also, once it's run, you can download the report. I'll show you that in a second here. But you can, if the files attachments are too large, instead of sending a big attachment over email, you can just send a link to the person. All right. And I think that covers that. And then real quickly, I'm going to go in this configure option here. Configure, the main thing I'm going to cover here is public search sets. Public search sets have a kind of a dual role. They can be used in reports. So say I've got a search set, something I'm searching for, and it's pretty large, it's very intense, and I want to use it in multiple reports. I can create a public search set and use that search set over and over. So, this particular one is pretty easy. It's just looking for calling or call party user for Victor. So it's nothing too intense there, but you do have that option. And the other reason other thing this is used for is role-based access for users. Say you've got users that you only want to see certain data. You don't want them to see the whole company's data. You just want to see certain. So in this case, if I just want a user to only see Victor's data, I can use this public search set in the user settings. If I go over here to my settings, users, accounts, and groups, and I want to create a new user. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I would fill in username, password, but down here under platforms, or platform privileges, I would add my MS Teams platform and then click on this plus button. And so if I want to make him a call analytics administrator, he'll have access to everything, or I can do this restricted data visibility. So I can view as own user, so I can view my own stuff, plus I can add this search set. So then this user would only be able to see his own data and Victor's, because that's how it's set up in the public search set. So a couple different ways of using that. And let me go back to call analytics reporting. I did want to go back to cover this real quick, the repository. I did mention that. So under reports, you've got manage with your saved reports, and the repository will list out any report that has been run. So this is good for, if you want to grab a report and just download it locally that was run, or it's also good for troubleshooting. Here you can see a status. These reports were all completed. But if you have a user that complains about a report that failed, you can see when it failed, if it did in fact fail, and do some troubleshooting from there. All right. So let's go back. Let's get into some data now. So on this history screen, I'm going to run a couple different reports, a couple different ways. The first way I'm going to do the report is by number. So I can search on calling party number. If I type in number here, you see different options. Calling party number, called party number. So this is who originated the call. This is where the call terminated. Or I can do both, or calling or called party, which is what I'm going to do. And then if I add criteria, I can do the exact number. For phone numbers, I usually like to do ends with, and then I put in the last 7 or 10 digits of the number. Because sometimes we could get the +1, sometimes we just get the number. So you want to cover all your bases and just do a few digits of phone number. If you find you're getting more than what you're looking for, you can always filter that down. The other thing I will say about this is our wildcard is the capital X. So if I'm just looking for anything with 4 digits, I would put in 4 capital X's. There's many different ways we can slice and dice this to get what you're looking for. So let's do this ends with. I'm going to change. I know I don't have any data for today, so I'm going to go to my selection and go to previous week, because I know I've got some test calls in there for previous week. Click on view results, and there's my data. First thing you're probably going to notice is, some of these have pluses here, some of them don't. The difference between that is this is a sequence of calls, one call with multiple sessions or multiple events. So you can expand that out, and one or more of these matched my search criteria, which was the number. So this will count as one call under in my 15. So it gives you basically the whole life of the call. This is what we refer to as cradle to grave. When the call came in, where it went, and what happened to the call. This particular call came into an auto attendant from this number and went to Victor. The auto attendant probably gave him a couple options. I think Victor's option number 2. So the caller pressed 2 and got connected to Victor. The one thing I will point out here, what I'm using here on this output is session, date, time, origination. I would suggest using that because I think I've got it added all the way at the end here. Call date, time, origination is another option you can use. But if you notice, all of these sessions or events have the same call date, time, origination. So it gets kind of confusing. That's what Microsoft gives us. Oops. And sorry about that. So I found that using the session date time does make more sense. Now the duration, you get your session durations, which give you, each leg of that call, what the duration was. And then the call duration, basically every leg is broken down by what the total duration is here. So we've got, like I said, this call kind of went through the auto attendant and, ended up by Victor. You can see, we can go through all these, but for sake of time, I'll just kind of go down here. We've also got these. These are peer-to-peer calls. If you notice, these calls with multiple sessions, they're considered group calls. So group calls have more than one or more than 2 participants, basically. And an auto attendant could be a participant. So that's the difference there. These peer-to-peer calls are basically, straight just call coming in, getting answered, or call going out, in this case, an outbound call from my teams to this number here. It's just basically an outbound call. Same with the inbound call from this number to myself. So that's great. Yeah, I like this. This is what I like to see on a report. So I don't have to go to the reports and start creating a brand new report. What I can do is click on this export results button. What that's going to do is take me into the reporting page, basically, and I can create a report. I can save this report for future use, give it a name, and you'll notice my search sets is what I search for on that history screen. So I can expand on this, I can add things, or I can just leave it alone. Grouping, we'll get into that in a little bit. I've got a couple saved reports with more grouping. Call history details basically will give you what you saw on the previous screen, or you can turn that off if you don't want that. If you just want stats, hey, how many calls? How many calls out of that went to voicemail? How many calls were answered? We can give you those stats and not give you all that details and what you're looking for. And then the report delivery, same with what we went over with the scheduling. You can download that locally, you can email it, you can send it to the repository and all these different formats. All right. The other thing I can search for here, besides number, I can search for name. So I'm going to put in calling party user or put in user and similar options. I could do separate, or I could do calling or called party. And then when I click add, it's going to give me a pick list that I can pick from. So I'm going to pick on Derek here and pick on Victor and give me those results for the previous week. So I've got 10 calls between Derek and Victor. You'll see in here, like this called me. I initiated the call and went to Victor. So that's why that call is included in there. So a lot of different things you could do on this history screen. And like I said, if you like the results, you can turn it into a report and be able to schedule that report on a regular basis. And one other thing I did want to show on this before. Auto attendant calls or queued calls. I've got a saved report that I can run to show you. calling or called party user agent role. In there, I've got the option to, a few different options. We've got an auto attendant set up, so I can do it on auto attendant, or I can do it on a call queue. Call queue, similar to a hunt group. So, calls coming into, a group of users that, who can answer those calls. We can break it down to who answered the calls from the call queue. So a lot of options there, and I've got a saved report that I can show you there. Here, well, let's get into that now. So in reports, like I said, shows you all your saved reports. So we'll go through these, quickly. I know we're kind of running short on time here. So so this call type summary by user, basically, I'm breaking it down by direction, which is inbound, internal, or outbound. So if I run this report, and I messed up because that's going to show me 0 results. So I'm going to run it again because I didn't change the, oops. Let me change the search time window to previous week. And let me slide this guy over, make it easier. All right, so, gives me a count of inbound calls, internal calls, and outbound calls. And then what I did, I further broke it down. I summarized, I grouped it, which is another layer of summarization, by the users. Who's making these calls? Now, one thing I will mention, I couldn't break it down by each user, internal, outbound, inbound, but I do have a total count. So obviously I'm making all the calls here, and there's a couple people down here. So these are either inbound, outbound, or internal. So just one option to do there. And then similarly, I can do it on the department. So in this particular case, I am picking on called party department. So how many calls are coming into my technical support department? And then on grouping, what kind of calls are they? So we've got direction there. So let me just go ahead and run this report real quick. So calls to, oops, sorry about that, tech support, 18 calls. And what were the breakdown of those calls? 8 were internal group calls, 6 were internal, and 4 were inbound. Since I used call party department, I'm not seeing any outbound calls because I'm just concerned with calls coming into it. Right? Let's go back, and here's my auto attendant on call queue. I'll go through those real quick. Said before, we're running short on time. So calls to auto attendant, 10 calls. And then what I've done is I've broken down by who's taken those 10 calls, who's answering those. So Derek took 2 of those calls. I took 3 and Victor took 3. Now this 8 doesn't match the 10. Maybe in that case, the caller that called in didn't make a selection and didn't connect it to users. So there's that. And then call queue, which, like I said, is similar to a hunt group call. We're just going to run that real quick. The setup was pretty simple, similar to the auto attendant. I just chose call queue, and I had 5 calls coming into that, and I'm showing 6 because the call queue, the way we have our setup, if I don't answer, it's going to roll to Victor. I'm going to get a call record for it coming to me, and I'm also going to get a call record going to Victor. So this count won't always match the total, but it's showing how many calls were presented to each of these agents. And then tech support calls. This one is similar to the call type by department. But what I'm doing here, and once you see once I run it, is 18 calls came in. I've got 10 just direct peer-to-peer calls and 8 group calls. And then I've broken it down by user. So Dan here didn't take any calls. Jim's the leader with 11, and Victor must not have been doing much that day, and he only had 1 call. So then I could also break it down by hour. This is for the total calls that came in. What's my busy hour? Do I need more staffing? Do I need more people in my queue to be able to answer calls? And then here, if you're more graphical, you can get that information in a graph form. What are my busy hours? I happen to add screen share calls. So Victor, I think this was his call. He did a screen share, so that gets reported as well. And then, yeah, here's broken down by my calls, what hours I took the calls, and Victor's here. All right. And then last but not least, total calls by date. I can break down calls coming in. This particular one I did by total calls by the call type scenario. And should populate there. So 34 calls, and out of those 34, each day, date, I broke it down by date. So how many calls per day? If I've got a busy day, I can quickly see that. All right. Trey, one thing I did want to mention, there's probably questions that came in regarding licensing. So as of right now, we count any Microsoft SKU that includes Teams and either phone system or Skype for Business. So that's how we're doing it now. Not saying that's set in stone. We've learned a lot in these last few months on licensing for Microsoft. So we're always open to changes. I know there might be specific questions from each one of you, your environment. That may be something we have to take offline, but did want to cover that. So how many, or do we have any questions, Trey?
All right, so we do have one. I think I was able to go ahead and answer it, but I'll go ahead and bounce it off of you just in case I missed something.
Well, I trust you.
They said, are there any security requirements or setting changes in Azure for the Teams connection to be allowed when you are initially creating the database connection to get the call data? They're primarily wondering if the connection will work if you have PIM or privileged identity management to your Teams environment only for a certain number of hours. I believe that this is not the case. You don't need to provision any kind of account as long as the tenant administrator grants OAuth access to hit the right endpoints for the organization. It should show exactly what types of information our app needs to be allowed to read. But I said that I would bounce it off of you as well. So does that sound correct, or do you have any thoughts?
To be honest, I don't know. So
Okay.
we'll go with what you said. If anything changes, we can get back to that person.
Okay. Yeah. And John Taylor, you had asked the question. If you have more questions about that, feel free to reach out to us offline, and we'd be happy to have a more in-depth discussion with you. Yeah. And then the other question I had personally was about licensing. You went ahead and answered at the end of the call. I've got one more question for you. This isn't from the chat, but this is just from me. We just had that one in the chat. But are we going to be able to report on any meeting data? I'm curious about that.
Meeting data will get recorded. I'm a little light on that right now. That's why I didn't cover it here. But I do believe we'll get some records regarding the meeting. Obviously be a group call.
Okay.
If they participated, we should get that data.
Okay, good. Yeah. So Microsoft presents them as group calls.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So I think we should be able to go ahead and store and report on much of that. So that's really good. That's awesome. Really exciting. Yeah, I don't have any other questions here in the Q&A. That must mean you did a bang up job, Jim. Good job. All right, guys. So some closing announcements here. Wanted to say that you can join us next week on Wednesday, March 6th for our upcoming weekly webinar. The topic for that discussion is going to be a quick start guide to WebEx calling analytics. Again, that's going to be next week on Wednesday, same time, March 6th. But I also wanted to mention, for those that are here and interested in Microsoft Teams Phone, we do have some Teams workshops coming up at the end of the month. So not next week, not the week following, but the week after that. I know it sounds a ways away, but it'll be here before we know it. It's going to be March 20th. We're going to be talking about how to get started with Microsoft Teams reporting. And then March 27th, we're going to dive into building those reports for Microsoft Teams. So you're going to get a little bit more of a in-depth look at how to utilize Variphy for Microsoft Teams Phone reporting. So with that, I do conclude today's webinar. I'd like to thank every one of you again just for taking the time to join us today. If you haven't already, feel free to add us on LinkedIn. My name is Trey Gonzalez, This is my colleague, Jim Schultens, who did the demonstration today. We both love to connect with you. And yeah, thanks again. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.